Okay, here we go. Alright. So, next. What if we don't know the population standard deviation, sigma? So remember, the first thing I said is, well, we've been saying we know mu. It doesn't make sense to say that we know mu. Well, what is because we don't know anything about the population. Well, what is sigma? Sigma is the standard deviation of the population. So if you think about it, it doesn't make a lot of sense to say that we know that either. So we're now going to extend further into reality the sort of problem that we can handle. So there's mostly good news, a little bit of bad news. So here's the good news. If we don't use sigma, which is the standard deviation of the population, what can we use instead? Yes, the standard deviation of the sample. Now, do y'all remember the notation for that? Standard deviation, S. Okay. So, that's the good news. Here's the bad news. There's a price to pay for using S. The distribution is no longer normal. So what's the distribution? How do we find probabilities? Ooh. Maya coming in strong. She knows this. The distribution of X bar in this case is what's called the student T distribution. We just call it the T distribution. Here's the good news. It's similar to the normal distribution. It's symmetric, the middle value is 0, and quite honestly, when you draw the picture of it, it looks almost the same as the normal distribution. Alright. Here's the bad news. The distribution changes depending on n, which is how big your sample is. The one thing that you also have to put in is what's called the degrees of freedom, which I'm going to abbreviate df. Here's the good news. It's just n minus 1. Okay. So let's figure some things out. I'm going to skip this bit. Okay. So first I'm going to show you how to do the T distribution using Excel, then I'll show you using StatDisk. So let's say we have a value of 0.5. Well, what's the command if we have the normal distribution? It's norm dist or norm s dist. So what's the command for a T distribution? No norm. T dist. I don't know. Okay. Now when you put in T dist, what do you have to tell it? Right. You have to put in the x, you have to put in your degrees of freedom, and you have to put in tails. In this case, Excel is nice. It gives you the option of saying how many tails you want. So let's say that our T value is 0.5, our degrees of freedom is 29. Let's say we want the area in one tail. There you go.
So what do you have to put in?
Here's what you have to put in. Now, this is also a little bit of a misnomer. It says X. It really should say T. You have to put in a T value.
So it says
X, degrees of freedom, and tails. It says X. It really should say T. Put in your T value there.
So you'll get
Sorry? Yeah, that's what Excel does. A- as far as drawing the picture goes, honestly, the t-distribution pretty much looks like the normal distribution, so the picture looks pretty much the same. It's a little different, but not much. Okay. So now let me show you how to do this using StatDisk. Go to Analysis, Distribution. Now which distribution do we want? Student t-distribution. So notice that you have to put in the degrees of freedom. Don't forget to change it. Then the t-value, well, the one we were just working with was 0.5. And then you click Evaluate. There you go. It tells you again area to the left, area to the right, two tails, and central. So it tells you all the things that we now realize we might need. What's the question? Yes. Oh, for Excel? Okay. So back to Excel, t-dist parentheses. And then it prompts you for an x value, which is really a t value, degrees of freedom, and how many tails. So what are the options for how many tails? 1 or 2. Exactly.
So we just write 1 or 2.
Exactly. Okay.